We're live. Happy New Year, Ben.
Happy New Year to you. We made it. We survived 2020.
We made it.
Well, I don't
Did
know. 2021 is not off to a fantastic start. I had my 7 day free trial and I would like to cancel.
I saw that on Facebook and it made me laugh so hard. Because isn't January 1st like the epitome of free 7-day trials? Like of anything. Oh, sure, I'll try that. I'll try that. Like
Exactly. I'm like, yeah. I uh I don't know. Actually, I think, 2021, it's they're just numbers. They're sort of arbitrary. I think
Mhm.
every day is, what you make it, and every day is the Lord's day, right? So but
Absolutely.
only 350 some days to 2022.
Oh man. Well, you know what? I just believe that every day matters, Like every day counts. Everything we do each day has a cumulative effect on the next day and so I'm just trying to focus on a 24-hour period even though, I set goals and all the things, but then okay, what can I do today to water that and invest in that because it is, I mean, it's not that I don't pay attention to what's going on, but it's more like if I just live there, I start to get really stressed out.
That's
And
a great, leave it to you to bring us right on the track with a great segue, right on point, because, what if we don't do today, we have no tomorrow, right? The things
mhm,
that we do today, whether it's, things that we're talking about in this show, preparation, things that we do in our worship space, or just our personal lives, if we just sandbag today and wait for tomorrow, there won't be one. There won't be anything, great about tomorrow. So,
yeah.
Lou says, seems we're having lingering 2020 issues. Now, I know Lou to be an excellent IT guy. It's in fact calling him an IT guy probably is a bit of a understatement, but a very technical person. Lou, have we tried just unplugging it and plugging it back in?
Oh, see that answer that really fixes a lot of my problems. Just shut it off, unplug it, and plug it back in. That's funny.
Yeah, can we just try that?
Hard reset. I don't know. Oh, that's funny. Well, speaking of 2020 and, things not going the way we planned, or maybe things happening that we didn't realize were happening because we were focused on one thing and not noticing the other, let's talk about wireless mics, right?
Well, you're right on the money. Yeah, it was a long, slow process, as many things with the government are. And we're talking, of course, about the 600 megahertz repack, where TV stations operating in the 600 megahertz were repacked down into 500 megahertz, 470 to 616. And then that spectrum 616 to 698 was auctioned off. And you're right. Yeah, that just was sort of slowly happening. Some people didn't know it was, and it wrapped up in 2020. And yeah, you're absolutely right that people came back and turned on their wireless mics and said, "Well, it worked a month ago. Why doesn't it work now?" They're just so frustrated. They don't understand. Well, it's not the equipment that has
Hmm.
failed. It's that you are now operating in a band that is occupied by somebody else who is much stronger. So
Okay. Huh. So that's, I mean, that's interesting and probably really frustrating for people who didn't didn't realize. I mean, we've been hearing about this for a while. I remember
mhm.
talking to you about it a year ago or over. I can't remember. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
we
been
probably
almost 5 years that we've known, I think, or six maybe even, because we knew before the process began, and then the
yeah.
process began. Uh, and again, it was sort of a long rollout because in order to move these TV stations, they have to change. They have to get an assigned new frequency, and then they have to have people climbing towers. And there's, it's not just flipping a switch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I think cuz I remember talking with you about that as thematic content for the 2019 conference, Overflow Worship Conference,
that's
just
great.
that upcoming transition and how to prepare for it. So, what are a couple of things that people can do because like you said churches are coming back, they're coming back into their spaces and flipping things on and probably scratching their heads going, okay, well, now what do we do? The pastors, headset mic or little ear lapel, what do you call those things?
Ear set.
You're set. Thank you.
You're set.
It's not a headset mic. That makes me think of Britney Spears. Like,
Yeah.
like she had the big.
Oh yeah. 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 Her and Garth Brooks. Yeah.
Right, right. Man, when I was a kid, I thought those things were so cool. Because they were just everywhere. But anyways,
Good sounding mic. I mean, from an audio standpoint, it'd be
yeah,
great if everybody wear one of those. But yeah.
right, exactly. So, I'm sure it's really frustrating people turning them on, it doesn't work, and thinking, oh my goodness, now do we have to spend thousands of dollars buying new mics because they're broken? I'm sure they're asking those questions. So, where should they start? Where should they begin to remedy this issue that's come up?
Well, I think the first thing is to figure out why. And I've said this many times, but I think one of the most frustrating things about RF or radio frequency or wireless is it's invisible and you don't see the issue. You experience it, but you don't readily see that interference, in your space unless you have a spectrum analyzer or something that lets you visualize radio waves.
Mhm.
So I think step one is to figure out what is the issue. We shouldn't just assume that it is the frequency issue. I don't want everybody to feel like, oh, if my mics don't work, that's probably what's wrong, and I should just go
Sure,
replace them. Maybe
sure.
not. Part of that would be a dialogue. For example, if you send us an email and say, hey, I have this mic and this is the frequency band, um, what's the issue?
Yeah.
We could probably tell you right away. But here's why it gets complicated, because it would be very easy to say if your mic is operating between 616 and 698, it needs to go.
Okay.
It may not be broken, but you are going to spend thousands of dollars because it needs to go.
Okay.
You're now operating illegally. You're operating in a space that is owned by somebody else, and it's not very likely that the radio SWAT team is going to kick down your church's door and that
Confiscate your microphones.
right. I mean, there is a fine, and it's like
Okay.
$11,000 per mic per day of operations. So it's pretty steep, but it's very unlikely that's actually. I don't know if the FCC actually fining anybody.
Sure.
Not to say that they couldn't, but
Right.
I think most likely they would just say knock it off.
Yeah.
The bigger issue is it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of the punitive action. It's just a fact that it's just not going to. You're going to lose against a cell phone tower every day.
Yeah. Yep.
Or the more complicated thing is if you say, okay, but my mic is not operating between 616 and 698. It's still in a legal frequency between 470 and 616.
Okay.
So why doesn't it work now? There's obviously no legal ramifications. So how come my mic doesn't work now? Well, remember, all those TV stations that operated above TV 37 in the 600 megahertz have now had to go find space down below. So they may have moved on top of you.
Okay.
Let me share a couple examples real quick here. I'm going to try to find some graphics if I can.
Okay.
Let's do this one. Houston. I love Houston because it is a mess. It truly is.
Houston, Texas. You want to know what? My maiden name is Houston.
Is it? Well, and I love Houston. I love Houston, Texas as a city.
Yeah, no.
But it.
I didn't mean that as like, oh, thanks, I'm a mess. It was totally,
Oh yeah.
totally unrelated. Like, oh, Houston. I actually didn't spell it that
yeah.
way. It was spelled without the O, so it looks like Huston. But there's a bit of irrelevant
That's
information.
so interesting. One of my dearest friends and mentors, who is since passed, had a last name spelled that way. We'll have to talk offline and see what would the odds be, because I just adored that man. He was a tremendous mentor for me.
Huh.
All right, so real quick, let's take a look at Houston. And like I said, it is a mess. If you're operating a wireless mic in Houston, I will pray for you, but
Good
we
luck.
also have physics on our side. I make wireless mics work in Houston all the time, but believe me, I have a lot of friends and a lot of customers in Houston that just Houston, Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, those are some of the worst markets in the country to operate a wireless mic. But don't worry, I got you.
I got you.
Yeah, it's worse than New York City. Anyway, so here we could take a look at, these are some of the channels that are operating in Houston, or at least were. And the reason I say were is because if we look, we see here's 49, 41, 44, 47, 42. All of those 56 all of those are operating above. Yes, Houston, we have a problem.
I mean, I was thinking it, but I just decided not to say it.
Houston, we have a lot of radios operating in our space. All of those TV stations would have had to move.
Okay.
And so they've gone down somewhere else. Let's take a look at another one here. Let's take a look at another very challenging market, and that is Chicago. And here again, you can see all these stations operating above TV 37. Now TV 37 we've never been able to use. That's been reserved for radio astronomy and medical telemetry. So we
Okay.
top out at TV 36, and then
Okay.
TV 37 is blocked, and everything above. Well, they've all had to come down into the 500s, 470 to 616. So um, what happens when they do? And let's take a look at something. Actually, no, I'm going to hold that one for later. Let's take a look at something else real quick here. Um, I'm going to pick on my pals in Chicago some more. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Poor
Uh,
Chicago.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. Let's pick on my pals in Denver first. I feel like we're going to just take our little tour around the country.
Okay.
Now, the previous graph that we saw showed us some shaded color based on signal strength.
Mm-hmm.
On the previous charts, we saw green is good for TV, which means it's very bad for us.
Okay.
This one is more Boolean. It's just yes or no, is there TV there? Because it makes a really good, clear example. And that's what I want to make this fairly easy for people to understand.
Yeah.
What we can see in Denver is that there is TV occupying 15 to 21 straight through,
Okay.
but there's an opening from 22 to 27. And here you can see the TV channel, and here you can see the megahertz, the frequency.
Got it.
So you'd say, okay, that's a really good place to operate in Denver,
Yeah.
is somewhere in here.
Okay.
Great. So we should all just get microphones that operate between 518 and 554, right? Wrong.
Wrong. Okay. Why?
Why? Why?
Why
Why?
not?
Let's take a look at Chicago again. So we just said that we should all go between 518 and 554, right? Well, the
Right.
problem is in Chicago, that is completely booked. Your wireless will not work. If you had a mic that works great in Denver and you move to Chicago, chances are it's not going to work at all.
Okay.
And now, so as to not get into the nuances of what mics will work where, because that is very individual to your market and
Yeah.
what else you have in your building, that's really a one on one conversation with
Okay.
us. The point is more that there isn't a universal answer. And so what works in one market may not work in another market. I
Yep.
have customers in Houston that have microphones that are still legal, but no longer work. And they've been able to successfully sell them to other markets where they'll work
Yep.
just fine.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and actually, I feel like that's really helpful to know because now we know what target we're shooting for. It's just like, in any industry, it's like, well, just give me the parameters or the questions to ask and then I can proceed. Otherwise, we feel like we're shooting in the dark or in this big pool of nothingness. So, knowing that, okay, it's going to have to be a one-on-one conversation because I live in this state in this city with this set of
Mhm.
circumstances and yeah, I think that's super helpful to know because then you're not frustrated. Like you said, Ben said, so Google said that this frequency would work.
Well, we
And
run into that all the time. People are like, well, my microphone is legal. So what's the issue? That's not a
sure.
question of legal.
Hmm.
Remember, we are guests in the TV space. And there's a lot of factors. Again, it may not even be related to this. If you have an issue, just feel free to reach out to us because it could be that you have a bad antenna cable, or it could be self
Sure.
inflicted,
Yeah.
which is sort of the other part of this conversation and the other part of helping determine what's going to work in a space. As a vocalist, when you have two voices singing
Mm,
at the appropriate frequencies, it sounds like more because of the harmony.
right.
And the same thing happens with radio waves. It's called RF harmonics or intermodulation. So we may have, four or five wirelesses operating, and maybe we just sort of pick those channels haphazardly. And now we've created a mess for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Worst time for this, by the way, traditionally speaking, is Christmas pageants.
Huh.
When you start bringing in a bunch of extra wireless you don't normally use, you borrowed one from this guy and you borrowed
Oh,
one from that
sure.
guy, and you rented a few,
You
and
found
all of a
this one
sudden,
in that bucket back there that you really need because
right,
you need an extra one.
and it's just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
That's when usually we get the most cries for help. But that's
Yeah.
why it's important, for us to not only understand where you are,
Yeah.
but we'll ask you, well, do you run any other wireless? Do you have wireless in
Yeah.
ears? Do you have wireless intercom? Is there anything else in the space? Because that's going to help us determine where your wireless needs to go, and then we
Yeah.
can also create a coordination plan for you.
Wow.
If I'd have thought about it, I'd have had that graphic ready. But this was the first year, by the way, in the last 9, that I watched a college football championship game from the comfort of my couch.
Yay.
Um, yes,
That's
it was
great.
really nice.
Yeah.
The previous years, okay, Lou, I'll get to that question in one quick second. Previous years, I was coordinating the wireless, hundreds of frequencies for the college football championship game, and the word there is coordinated. That we say, okay, here are the frequencies you're going to go on. There's
Hmm.
not going to be any guesswork. There's not going to be any hit the scan button. When you get into larger channel counts, it must be coordinated.
Okay. Okay. Before you answer Lou's question, just one more quick thing on the tag end of that. So, when I go into churches and if they ask me to come in and lead worship with their team, a lot of the churches that I work with are, uh, you know, they they really range in what their setup is. You've talked to a lot of the people who come to the
Oh yeah,
conference. It's everything from still working with analog boards to they're fully set up with digital. They have in-ears, they're wireless, all of that. So what I did is I set up a rig and a rack that allowed me to actually bring my own in-ears and just run it through my own system and run it through my computer. That way, if I'm going solo and running my own tracks, they don't have to worry about it. They don't have
right.
to, deal with it. But in that case, if I like am operating on their same frequency that their wireless mics are on, that's going to be an issue, right? Because they're going to
Absolutely.
compete. Okay. So then it's a matter of I would have to talk with their sound tech and figure out which bandwidth, and because it's like you said, I can't just hit the scan button. I have to like look at all of theirs and what channel they're on and find a different one that's not competing. Is that right?
Yeah, and to find one that will work harmoniously
Mm-hmm.
in a way that doesn't create harmony,
Yeah.
with what they have.
Yep.
And
Okay.
this is sort of me responding to you and also talking to our viewers at the same
Yeah.
time to say they may not know.
Right.
Uh,
And that was going to be my next thing. Like,
Sorry, I
well,
didn't mean to steal your thunder.
yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. What if they
I
don't?
have literally, I guess there's a new definition of literally in the dictionary this year because we use it in that sense. So in the modern way, I have literally run into people who had no idea their mics even could change frequency. It's
Got
just
it. Yep.
always been there and they don't know why. And don't you dare touch it.
Right. Right. It works. Don't touch it.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually,
Okay.
I have a great story. We don't have time to tell, but I've run into that with smaller visiting media at like the national championship game where you tell them, look, no, you don't understand. This must change. You cannot stay where you are.
Right.
And they push back because it's very scary to them. But I'm like, look, there are 200 wireless frequencies going to be in use today. And you have to play ball or you can't have a wireless. I mean, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I,
It's going to cause
and
a big problem.
right. And
Yeah.
yours isn't going to work and you may interfere with the head coach. And believe me, that doesn't go over well. So,
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
millions of people watching this game and it's my job to make sure it works. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
don't
then,
miss that, by the way. Viewers, I really enjoyed sitting on the couch. I don't miss that at all.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that would be stressful. So moving to Lou's question, in the super saturated markets, what's the plan B?
So Lou asked the question in a way that, of course, I know Lou. He's a very good friend of mine. He asked the question in a way that I know that he kind of knows the answer. And Lou is also a very astute wireless person, which no doubt is why he's watching today. I'm sure he saw wireless and said, "Ooh, I'm watching that show."
Yeah.
But a point on that. That's probably why Lou is so good. The people who are really good are always seeking more information.
Hmm. Yeah.
So if you ever feel like you're at a point where you don't need more information, some expert is probably shaking their head
Uh-huh.
because
Yep.
we always need more information. I always need more information.
Lifelong learners right here.
Yeah, otherwise you're getting steamrolled by technology. So to Lou's question, again, I think it's a one-on-one. What he's referring to, and I just want to touch on it and then not dive real deep because I don't want to scare people and I also don't want to give people too much false confidence at the same time. Sort of hit right down the Goldilocks zone here,
Yeah.
but guard bands are some frequencies that are available to us in the 600 megahertz. They're called like the duplex gap and the guard bands between the uplink and downlink of T-Mobile and other cell phone companies that have bought this. There are some real restrictions to using it, though. We have to be below 20 milliwatts, and we have to not be able to tune outside that. And so, yes, it absolutely can be an option, Lou. Uh, but again, I think it's part of that overall plan where you say, where are you at? If you're in Atlanta and you need 20 channels of wireless, we're going to have to dig deep a little bit. It could
Okay.
be doing something, with very low power wireless,
Mm-hmm.
which is less of a risk for intermod. We can start slotting in a lot of channels. Uh, you know, Things like Shure has their 1 milliwatt type stuff where anyway, it depends, of course, is the answer here.
Yeah.
In the coordinating for the championship game, I would often use, and I'm really reluctant even to say this on national broadcast here, uh, kids, don't try this at home,
Yeah.
but or don't try this at a national championship game, although if you're doing that, you're probably qualified. There are things called slot frequencies where even if we have two TV stations that are back to back, there's a tiny little gap between them,
Okay.
and we can stick a wireless in there, maybe.
Okay. Sure. Okay. So here's a question based on what you're talking about here. And this, if I'm wondering this or kind of curious about this, my guess is that our listeners who are in the like beginning phases of trying to understand this, they might be wondering as well. So let's say, a place like Atlanta. I have a
Mhm.
lot of friends in Atlanta who are in, churches down there and who are, leading worship in like North Point and Woodstock and Passion City Church and that kind of thing. So you've got this, area of the world that has lots and lots of big churches, lots and lots of small churches, and they're all trying to find frequencies. So
Mhm.
is that a logistical nightmare when you have a lot of churches doing that week in and week out? When are they constantly trying to figure out their right spot, or is it that once they find it, then they're okay for a while because they're not traveling? They're in one building. That's a loaded question. You can take either one of those. Maybe start with the first one, and we'll see where it goes. But I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. The great thing about UHF and TV is, except for these extraordinary circumstances where there's a government mandated repack, they
Mm-hmm.
don't move. You know,
Okay.
TV 14 is always at TV 14, and it doesn't
Okay.
move. It doesn't surprise us. So once they're set, they're probably set.
Okay.
Unless something else changes in the environment, i.e., you bring in a new wireless, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Um, then nothing else really needs to change. Your
Okay.
church isn't moving, and the frequencies that are affecting it don't change. Again, until something changes in the environment.
Yeah.
Whether or not lots and lots of churches seeking frequencies are a problem for each other depends on how close they are to each other. If the
Okay.
churches are next door, could
Then
be.
yes.
You
Okay.
know, Unlikely that those signals would propagate outdoors through the walls. I mean, even a
Yeah.
couple blocks is probably, plenty to attenuate that signal sufficiently.
Okay.
But if you do find that you're bumping into your neighbor church, and I have seen that,
Okay.
because glass, as long as it's not polarized, glass is basically transparent to RF as well. And so,
Okay.
they'll go through the windows.
Yep.
So I have seen that in rare circumstances in small towns where the churches are side by side. You just got to play nice and say, okay, well,
What can we
we've
do?
done that too. We've said, okay, here's a coordination for each of you that is coordinated with each other. And as long as
Yeah.
everybody stays put,
Yep.
everybody's fine.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fascinating, but it's also just what from what I'm hearing and what I'm understanding is this is really a once in a hopefully lifetime or very long time, situation where everybody's having to pivot and kind of, figure out their new frequencies. But from then, if you're a stationary church, it's not going to necessarily change on like a frequent basis. There might be times here and there, but it's
Right.
more moving forward, more like live broadcasts, like you said, big games, people who are traveling. Yeah, Neil says, hopefully. Right. I know.
Yes.
Hopefully, dot, dot, dot.
Well, and of course, we've talked about Neil in a lot of past shows. Another very good friend of mine, another very, very bright guy. Excuse me. And he does live in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I don't. I mean, again, what we should try to do is clean the house and get all the issues addressed, because there could
Yeah.
be more than just a frequency issue.
Yeah.
Again, it could be self-inflicted with coordination, could be antenna etiquette, could be transmitter placement. There's all kinds of things we can go through. But yeah, once you get the house in order, things are pretty good. And that's a great his hopefully and your comment I'm going to tie together into a great segue to people are asking what next.
Yeah.
When will my 500 megahertz wireless mic no longer be usable? Um, and the answer is nobody knows, right? This is
Yeah.
at the mercy of the government, at the FCC. It literally does take an act of Congress. Um,
Ha.
literally, there's that word again.
There it is,
Excuse me, but
literally.
I think it's going to be a really long time. And a
Okay.
couple reasons for that is when they went to clear the 600 megahertz band, they actually wanted to clear a lot more. I think initially 136 megahertz, and they settled on like 80 something,
Okay.
84, 88, I forget what it was, because there just wasn't the money there. There wasn't the demand from the cellular carriers. They're looking at much higher frequencies now, 25 gigahertz and things like that. They're looking at super high data speeds in packed metro markets. They wanted the 600s because it propagates really well through walls and things like that over long distances. It's great for rural America and great, for building their 5G networks on. But they've got what they need now.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any demand. Nobody's really asking for that. Two, in order to do that, uh, and the FCC made it pretty clear that they don't really care about us or even broadcast or any of those.
Right.
Anybody else using wireless mics, Broadway, the NFL, everybody was affected.
Yeah.
But the FCC does absolutely care about TV stations, which are using the same space. So to go
Yes.
back to TV and say, okay, you got to move again, and where to?
Yeah.
Where do you move to now? I don't see this being approached for a very long time.
Okay. Huh.
I
Yeah.
would say nobody has a crystal ball, but I would say minimum 10 years.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it
At
could
which
happen
point, yeah,
in our lifetime. It's not like,
it
oh,
could.
yeah.
Because we consume our media differently. You're
Yeah, that's
watching this
true.
video on your phone or on a computer. You're not watching this on broadcast television. But
That's
again, to
true.
take off all the OTA, all the over-the-air TV, that's a tough bridge to cross.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it happening in the near future for sure. And
Okay.
you know what? And in 10 years, who knows what technology will be available for wireless mics
It's
too.
true.
So,
It's true. Yeah. We have rapidly increased and rapidly developed technology and just so much in the last decade and even in the last 5 years. I think about just from a music standpoint, what I was doing, in 2013 versus now and what we have capability to do is pretty incredible. And I really think, and my husband said this at the beginning of quarantine in 2020, he said, I believe that technology, churches, like all of it is going to grow 5 years worth of growth in the next 10 months
I
because
agree.
and I think it did because everybody was just kind of in this little greenhouse of, okay, well, I either sit here and wallow or we figure it out and we move forward. So, I think that uh, as we wrap it up, Ben, can you tell people who are listening who don't know how to get in touch with NLFX Pro how to do that? Because, like you said, this is a one-on-one conversation, and
Mhm.
I'm certain that there are people watching in the Facebook group that are like, yep, 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 I got to figure this out. So, how can they approach NLFX Pro?
Super easy. You can find us through any of our social channels, Facebook, all the other ones, YouTube. Obviously, great just to go to our website, www.nlfxpro.com. You can send us a message through there. You can call
Okay.
us, even toll free. Uh, email, send a telegram. We try to be very easy to reach. And yeah, we'll be very. Oh, and look at this. Hey, somebody in the marketing team is all on it there.
Amazing.
Shoot an email to customer care at nlfxpro.com, and we would love to help you. And by the way, we made that option available on our site as well. If you go to buy a wireless microphone, you can choose the frequency if you know it, but there's
Mhm.
another option where you can say, you know what, pick it for me. uh,
Okay.
and we don't just do a lottery. We'll at that point we'll reach out to you to discuss your needs and
Ben has a spinner in his
exactly
office and
it's
he
like a
just goes
bingo machine.
ding.
One last thing I want to show you. I realized I didn't share this graphic, and I think it's really cool and worth showing, just because it's kind of pretty and it's it kind of looks like a weird Rorschach drawing. But
Mhm.
this map here is showing, and this is near the Chattanooga area. But what we can see, and I like it because it's got some terrain involved,
Mhm.
is this is showing us just one TV station. So we have to look at each TV station individually. but it's showing us that this, effective radiated power of this TV station is 45,000 kilowatt, or 45 kilowatt, 45,000 watts, excuse me. And what we can see is our church is here. So we can see the strength of this TV station in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in this ravine, I probably can't even get that TV station.
Okay.
Whereas here, I definitely would, and it's definitely a problem. So the moral of the story here is that, simply looking at a database that shows us miles away from a TV station doesn't tell us everything we need to know.
Yeah.
Uh, could be that a TV station appears to be far enough away that it's not a problem, but the transmitter's up on a hill and we're in Indiana and it's very flat, and maybe it is a problem.
Yeah.
uh, Vice versa, we're not very far from this TV station at all. The church is here. I go, I can totally use that space. So it allows us to make really, intelligent decisions about how to
Mm-hmm.
maximize the use of the space. And to Lou's question earlier, that's one of the ways that we might deal with a really crowded environment, is to see, what we can get away with in terms of, what the environment is doing for us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, this was great, Ben. Thank you for taking the time to walk everybody through that. I know it was really helpful. And you guys reach out to them if you have more questions, because obviously they know what they're talking about and they can help you get what you need and the frequency that you need it in, so that you're not scratching your head or, super, super frustrated. There's a solution, right, Ben?
Absolutely. If this gave you a headache or if this frustrated you, I want you to know I love this stuff. As weird as it is, as twisted as my brain is, I love this stuff, and we thrive in this environment. So yeah, we're happy to do the heavy lifting for you. In fact, we love to do it.
Awesome. Great. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. It's fun to be back and hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you guys next time.